Dum diddy dum diddy dum.
Jones, Bowden. He's got it. England have won the World Cup by the barest of margins.
Stokes flashes it away through the covers for four, and England have won the match.
Hello and welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket. Now look back at the first day's play in the second LV Insurance Test match between England and New Zealand. And this podcast is now being supported by LV Insurance, who of course are sponsors of both Test match and County Championship cricket. And England 258 for 7 at the end of the first day at Edgbaston. I think that's almost sort of honours even in a way. Do you feel that? Although England won the toss and they were unbeaten at lunch, no wickets down, wickets fell in the second session, but then they came back quite strongly at the end. So even Stevens?
I don't know. Strange sort of day, really. England on top at the start. It felt like New Zealand's day up until sort of about the last hour and a half. You thought that New Zealand making good progress here. They're chipping away. Good first day pitch, or decent first day pitch, but quite good first day bowling conditions. The lights were on, overcast for a large part of the day. The sun finally came out at 5 o'clock. I suppose the answer will lie in tomorrow's weather. I mean, we know the weather's dry, but what sort of conditions are England going to get to bowl in tomorrow? On my weather app, it says it's going to be overcast tomorrow, sort of warm but overcast. So if you get to bowl in overcast conditions, I mean, generally you feel those are sort of good bowling conditions, and England have got the full pace bowlers. So it is one of those, I suppose. Wait till both sides have batted and have a look. It's actually a really good question of whose day was it and who's ahead in the match. What does your who's winning graphic say at the end of the first day's play?
Let's have a look. It says that basically England are on top with around about a 60% chance of winning. And that hasn't changed much actually through the day, a little bit down to about 55 maybe when they lost those 3 quick wickets around the 70 mark. But then back up through that partnership with Dan Lawrence and Mark Wood at the end of the day, back up to around about 60%. New Zealand, their hopes rose a bit with those 3 quick wickets in early afternoon, but they're now down at 22% and the draw roughly 18%. So it's 60% England, 22% New Zealand, 18% the draw.
Well, I have to say, I'm a bit surprised at that. And I'm a bit surprised that earlier in the day when England lost those wickets, that they weren't a bit lower and New Zealand were a bit higher, because to me, it felt as though they were on top. I suppose if you look at the makeup of New Zealand's side, you might say, no Kane Williamson. That is something, although he didn't feature particularly on the scorecard at Lords, did he? He struggled. He failed in both innings, but obviously he's a big player for them. And that they've made all those changes, and they will be batting last, presumably. Well, unless they get 500 and bowl England out. So you can see the factors in favour of England, and with those 4 quality bowlers as well, and Anderson, Broadwood, and Stone playing on his home ground. I have to say, I don't see the game quite as firmly in England's favour as that. But
no, I think it's runs on the board, isn't it?
There's that. But they're only 250 of them, though.
Yeah, no, well, nearly 260, and they should get up to 300. And if you look at the history of Edgbaston Test matches, and I think of, say, the 2005, the great Test match against Australia in 2005 there, all the scores were round about the 280 to 300. Australia needed 280 to win in the final innings, and obviously fell a couple of runs short.
Hold on a second, Yoz. England made 400 on the first day.
That's true. But after that, the scores were much lower. No, good point, good memory. Actually, England made 400 in a day, didn't they?
That's right.
And that was a really flat pitch. And after that, and I think generally scores at Edgbaston have been, round about 250 to 300. It's a pitch that just nibbles, doesn't it? And also, I think the new stand helps the ball to swing a little bit. especially when the clouds are up and also the lights are on, which they were for most of the day. So I think it is quite a bowler-friendly pitch, but batsmen can get on top. It's a good cricket pitch, isn't it? It's a good contest between bat and ball. You get phases of play where the batsmen dominate, and then bowlers strike back and get a few wickets, and the new ball can have an impact. And quite often you get lower order runs with the ball getting soft as well. Of course, you get lots of value for shots because it's a fast outfield, and it's just a great venue, isn't it, to play cricket with a brilliant atmosphere as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, what was great about today was the fact that there were supporters, in good number back in the ground. I think I got a bit fed up towards the end of the day's play by hearing that song. I think they adapted it. I don't want to go to work, didn't they? Today, I don't want to go home. I remember the Wales football supporters singing that during the Euros, whatever it was, 4 or 5 years ago, when I don't want to go home, which they wanted to go on in the tournament. I heard that many, many times sung by the Wales fans, but I heard it probably about 4 or 5 times too many today by the end.
It's definitely a venue to go with earplugs, isn't it? And certainly a special prize for the person today who went as Boris Johnson, armed with an injection, a needle, and he was chasing around after someone dressed as a coronavirus. So there's plenty of imagination in the Eric Hollies stand at Edgbaston. Great effort for England to start the day with an unbroken first wicket stand in the first session. So definitely have to say, wouldn't you? First session to England?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and unspectacular. In a straight, I mean, nothing surprising in a way. Although I haven't said that. I mean, generally speaking, England haven't put together good opening stands at home in the last few years. But I mean, what I'm saying is nothing surprising in the batting of Sibley and Burns. They batted like Sibley and Burns. Although, as the day went on, as the afternoon went on, I thought Burns became a little bit more expansive and actually played quite a few more offside strokes today. And ultimately, that was his downfall, wasn't it? Chasing a ball that, probably that he might not have played at Lords early on in that first part of his innings at Lords.
Wasn't it interesting that in this innings, I mean, they didn't kind of get off to a flyer, but they were purposeful. They were busy at the crease. They pushed singles, and it was in such contrast to the attempt to just nullify New Zealand at the last day of the Lords Test match. And they got on top of the bowlers a little bit. I mean, without getting up to 100 in the first session, they got to close to 70, and with no wickets down. I mean, that constitutes an excellent start.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's a good first session in a Test match?
Yeah, I mean, I think no wickets down. No wickets down. If you win the toss, no wickets down at lunch. Not 20 for naught. I was going
to say, what if you're 40 for no wicket at lunch?
Yeah, I mean,
you've gone nowhere, have you?
You haven't gone anywhere. No, I think 60, 70 for naught is fine. 100 for naught is excellent. So, yeah, I think you give them 8 out of 10 for seeing off the new ball. That's their main job. But, try and get some runs as well. So that was a really good start. Interesting, after lunch, the ball just started to swing. I enjoyed watching the New Zealanders bowl, and what they're doing very simply is, the ball's a little bit older, but they managed to get one side really nicely polished. They worked so hard on the ball. And they got both Matt Henry and also Trent Boult basically bowl the orthodox swinger, and then they just tilt the seam slightly and bowl the same with the same action, and it doesn't swing. It just angles in. Basically, that's a very simple adjustment that modern bowlers make. Sort of, it's almost like a scrambled seam delivery instead of the seam up, but it works very effectively. It's interesting. I mean, I really highly rate this New Zealand bowling attack. And actually, I was talking to Simon Dool about the evolution of New Zealand bowlers. And of course, they're famous for, in the past, having these dribblies. If you go to club cricket in New Zealand, they all bowl at sort of 70 miles an hour with the keeper stood up and the ball nips around off horrible cabbage patch pitches. That used to be the case, but they've really improved their pitches over the last 20 years or so. An intervention from John Bracewell, actually, who of course played down at Gloucester, was coach at Gloucester for many years, the former New Zealand off spinner who then became the head coach of New Zealand. And he just said, we've got to get better pitches. We've got to encourage aggressive fast bowlers and proper batting. And as a result of their better pitches in the last 20 years, they've now produced these really potent fast bowlers, Trent Boult, Matt Henry, Tim Southey, and Kyle Jameson, and many others. And they're really strong, deep bowling attack. Neil Wagner, I didn't mention. Those sort of bowlers probably wouldn't have come through for New Zealand 20 years ago because their club and provincial pitches were so rubbish that it wasn't worth trying to bowl quick. I tried, and it was a complete waste of time. So, New Zealand cricket has really evolved its standard of facilities and pitches in particular, and that's paid dividends for their bowling attack, who took 3 quick wickets straight after lunch.
One thing they were able to do today, New Zealand, at the start of the game was make lots of changes as well. That sort of shows their strength and depth. And you look down that New Zealand side, it doesn't feel, well, obviously it's a bit weaker for not having Williamson in, and it's not got Southey in, but, they were able to bring in Bolt today and Henry, and a spinner that was able to take a couple of wickets as well. I mean, that's the other interesting thing. It was the ticklish thing at Lords as well. We missed out on that third day, and we saw Root bowling on it. We saw Santa bowling on that pitch. I've said this before, that I thought a good spinner at the back end of that match might have caused some problems, and I wonder whether a decent spinner might cause some problems at the back end of this match as well. Patel did get 1 or 2 to turn today, and you think it's going to be dry, isn't it, for the next 3 or 4 days? I don't know whether we're going to get to the 5th day. I don't know. We'll see how the seam bowlers get on tomorrow. But if we do have a 5th day, then the spin could come into it. But England, they're wedded, aren't they, to 4 quick bowlers? And you can understand why in English conditions. I can totally understand that. And they've not got that balance because of no Stokes or Wokes or whatever, any all-rounders. So poor old Jack Leach, he went out for some batting practice today, rather than get the prospect of bowling at Edgbaston, which could offer, because England winning the toss as well. You think, we'd love to, I'd love to bowl in the 4th innings of the match, but. So anyway, so New Zealand were able to make changes. England didn't make, barely made a change at all. It's funny, actually. A lot of people thought Overton was going to play, but if you think about it, logically, sort of last one out, first one back in, Stone did play in the winter, and he bowled well in his 1 Test match in India. So why should Overton sort of, leapfrog him and come back in? And Stone's home ground as well. The other thing as well, it did sort of help them avoid the embarrassment of, if there was any, I don't know if there was, but with Robinson going out, and then of course that incident involving Craig Overton back in 2015, when he was involved in that match, and there was that comment he made on the field, that he said he doesn't remember making, but anyway, he was charged under the ECB code, although it wasn't under racially offensive language, it was under under sledging, abusing a batsman rather than racially abusing. Although some people who heard it thought it was over the line and should have been dealt with in a different way. So no Overton Day, Stone in. So England not really tinkering, but New Zealand tinkering a lot with their side, and almost giving everyone a chance before the World Test Championship final. Yeah,
which is good strategy. What about England's batting? How much blame was attached to some of the dismissals? I thought Sibley got a good ball. Actually, he was a little bit tentative, sort of poked at it, but it was a good ball from Matt Henry straight after lunch. I thought Joe Root actually also got a good ball as well. He was a little bit slightly half a bat rather than full face, but again, it just left him slightly. He had to play it, I think. The one or the couple of dismissals that were very much the batsman was culpable was Zach Crawley. I mean, who just looked very tentative, and he was done by a late swinger from Bolt, which he left and nearly bowled him. And then, of course, he was induced to then play at the next one, which stayed out there. And he just got a horrible edge, a ball he shouldn't have played at. Totally unconvincing shot. I suppose a product of recent dismissals. And he's now averaging 10 in about the last 12 innings, which is kind of really sad, isn't it?
Yeah, you say Bolt there. It's actually Wagner. So
it was Wagner. You're right.
Talk about the left armour. Yeah, I mean, I think that if you look at the shot he got out to, in isolation, you say, why on earth did that happen? But actually, what you've got to do is you've got to look back at 3 other balls that he's been bowled recently, the 2 dismissals at Lords and the ball before that got him out. It's funny, isn't it? Sometimes you look at if you just look at the wickets highlights, you get a false picture. So you've got a player who is just a bit all at sea at the moment and lacking confidence. And one of the things I wanted to ask you actually, Yoz, as a former professional player, what does, and it goes for bowling as well, bowlers get out of form. What does being out of form feel like? Does it, and how do you get it back again?
Well, I mean, it's a really good question. I think that certainly from a batsman's point of view, the ones I've seen, they just think about everything too much. So instead of just letting it happen, going out there. I mean, Ian Bell was on our virtual cricket club once, wasn't he? And he talked about the when he made those 300s in an Ashes series, he just felt everything flowed. He didn't really think about it. It just things hit the middle of the bat, feet got into the right position. Head was perfectly over the line. When you're out of form, you're worried about your back lift, you're worried about your grip, you're thinking about how your feet are moving, you fiddle around with your trigger movements, you're trying to get at the ball. So often you find batsmen out of form are trying to push at the ball like this rather than wait for it and play it with slightly softer hands. And there's a sort of slight panic that gets into their whole kind of biorhythms that tries to push at the ball and everything happens in a sort of slightly frenetic sort of way, or a very timid sort of way as well, like Crawley today. And with bowlers, it's a bit the same. You're nervous running in, you don't run in with purpose, then you might run in a bit too fast. I remember once trying too hard against my old team, Middlesex, and bowling an absolute load of garbage. And then I thought, right, slow down, just relax, allow your rhythms to control you and flow. And that's then a much more effective way of playing. And undoubtedly with batting, it has to flow. If you've got too much in your head about things that have gone wrong, trigger movements, footwork, the bowler, the pitch, if you're thinking too much, your mind is going to be clouded. If you're thinking nothing, if you can try and have a clear head, and that's the evidence I've got from talking to many batsmen, you're going to be in a much better state. I mean, James Bracey, God knows what was in his head. I mean, he must have been lying awake for days, sort of desperate to get out there and play his second test innings, having got a duck at Lords. And, it all just went horribly wrong. He poked at one that he didn't need to play at, first ball. I mean, he'll look back at that. It's a horror show.
Yeah, he had to sort of drag himself from the crease. So, I mean, he'll probably get another go in the second innings, but that might be it. That might be it for a while, won't it? So, he knows he's got one innings to, show the cricketing world what he's about. There's a chance, reasonable chance. Who knows how the future pans out? You never know, do you? That he'll get another go somewhere down the line. Way to runs in county cricket, but he's going to come out of the side, isn't he, sometime, to allow Josh Buttler to come back in.
Now, the star of the day, undoubtedly, for England, and he's the winner of the LV Insurance #InWithHeart award. So we're giving an award each day for a player who gets really stuck in and shows a lot of grit and determination. The #InWithHeart award. And that undoubtedly is Dan Lawrence. Of course, you've got to give some credit to Rory Burns, who made a very good 81 at the top of the order. But Dan Lawrence really rescued the situation very effectively. I love the way he played. I mean, he's not a purist by any means. He's got in some ways, quite an ugly method, but he's effective. And I like the way he played. Having got out to a horrible shot at Lords, he wasn't afraid. And this is a good example of not being constrained by lack of runs, by still backing yourself. And he did. And, he got a couple of sort of lucky fours early on, balls that he tried to leave that cannoned off the blade, even those he middled, actually. And they went for four. But as time went on, he played some really, really good shots. And I like the way that he stepped right across to Bolt, outside off stump, and worked him through the leg side off the stumps. In actual fact, there were essences of Steve Smith about the way he played, where he got right outside the off stump and worked balls off the stump through the leg side, playing to his own strengths, and then forcing the bowlers in the end to go even wider. And then he drilled them through the offside. So, it was a really positive, purposeful, and skillful innings, I thought.
Yeah, and the point we were making about Zach Crawley, when you're all sort of scrambled and you're struggling, and he came out and was out early on today as he was at Lords. The same could have been true for Dan Lawrence as well, because he's another one who might be jettisoned, waiting Ben Stokes to come back. So this was his opportunity, and he didn't play a very good shot. He really didn't in the last Test match. And so, a really admirable effort. And I suppose it's going to be your day when you try to leave one and it takes the bat and goes down to third before.
Yeah.
You sort of think, well, perhaps it might be my day. But he did play a couple of lovely offside shots and that movement across as well, flicking the ball into the leg side. He's unorthodox. One of the sort of feelings I had today when I was watching is, are they starting to make English men's batters in sort of Frankenstein's lab? They're not all things of beauty, are they? By any means, they're sort of hybrid and hodgepodges. And where are the classical players gone? The classic players. Joe Root is one, I suppose, and
he's quite old school, isn't he? Really?
Well, I suppose he is, but
he's a connection with the past, and he grew up watching Michael Vaughan. Michael Vaughan was a very classic sort of player, wasn't he? And comes from the same club as Rooty. And but the new generation, the modern generation, all do it. If you look at the sort of the younger players in that England side, Dominic Sibley, Rory Burns, to a lesser extent Ollie Pope, undoubtedly Dan Lawrence, they are all quite crab-like in a way, and very individual, very idiosyncratic. I suppose Zach Crawley would be more of your classic player. He's got a more upright sort of style. So you still get some, but each to their own. And I think Smith has had a massive influence, and he will have an even bigger influence with kids growing up, especially in Australia, watching the way he plays. Look at Marnus Labuschagne. He's a complete kind of carbon copy, isn't he? So it's good to see, I think. I think it's interesting watching the way the game evolves and players find ways to make runs. And well done to Dan Lawrence. You know what he has got? One thing really stands out is the very fast hands, because he gets into positions where he's almost leaving his stumps exposed. Then the speed of his hands gets the ball away to the boundary or through the field. So that's an invaluable asset.
One thing that I noticed today, just sort of trawling through Twitter, is a tweet from Crickviz, who said that actually Lawrence played the ball later than any other England batsman today, which I thought was interesting. So if you can do that, they say see it early, play it late, and also Graham Gooch, just going back to that thing about techniques. Graham Gooch said, what does he say? I don't coach batting, I coach run scoring. So ultimately, it is about how many, isn't it? How many you're able to score. I suppose the worry is about how much your technique will be exposed by top class bowlers. And New Zealand, they've got some very good bowlers. India have got some excellent bowlers, and Australia have got some excellent bowlers in their conditions as well. So there's going to be a lot of testing on the way in the next few months, and it's about how you stand up to that and come through, and whether that technique that looks a bit odd can come through it. It may be that it does. It may be that it just gets exposed, and England have lots of problems in their batting lineup. And there were some problems today, weren't there? There were some poor shots, really. I'm surprised. You said Sibley got a good ball, and it was a goodish ball. I'm surprised he got out to it, Sibley, because he's normally pretty good at letting that sort of ball go, and that's it's one of his strengths. You feel. Perhaps it was just a bit too. Perhaps it was just a fraction close, and he just was drawn into it. Perhaps that was what it was. But he normally in that channel, he lets so much go, and of course he wants the bowler to come over to him, and then he works it through the leg side for his runs. So sort of not quite one thing nor the other today from Sibley. 35, excellent from Burns. Looked really fluent. I thought that actually shows. When you're confident, it shows what you can do. I thought he played really nicely, but then perhaps that fraction bit of overconfidence got him out, because his dismissal was not that dissimilar in a way to Brace's. But of course, we look at Brace and think, oh no, Burns, you sort of you give him a pass because he made 81. But if you put the two together, well, they will put the two together because they were in successive balls. Neither looked particularly good shots.
No, they didn't. And well done to England in the end for getting up to the close, nearly 260 for 7. Both Ollie Stone and Mark Wood making valuable contributions. Woody still there at the wicket. He was talking to me earlier in the summer about his desperation to make more of his batting and to make more runs. And actually, in fact, he used to be a batsman for his club Ashington, and he's desperate. I think that would be an invaluable little asset for Wood if he could just get a few more 20s, 25s with Anderson and Broad really not registering too many runs. It would be great if Wood could be someone at number 9 who could just get those key runs when England really need them. So yeah, honours even, but England certainly on top in terms of getting the runs on the board, I suppose, and it'll all depend now on whether they can get past 300 and whether New Zealand can see off the new ball themselves and make a fist of this pitch. I think there's plenty of wickets out there, but there's also plenty of runs. So the game is nicely poised. Let's leave it there, and we'll join you at this time tomorrow for our look back at the second day's play in this LV Insurance second test match from Edgbaston.
Dum diddy dum diddy dum.